These are the types of reforms I will pursue beginning on my very first day of office as President of the United States. The very first day. We need political reform, we need government reform, and we need regulatory reform. So let me just talk about each of these for a moment. First, I will reform our special interest-driven politics. When I am president, I will start by closing the revolving door in the White House that's allowed people to use their administration job as a stepping stone to further their lobbying careers. I will make it absolutely clear that working in an Obama administration is not about serving your former employer or your future employer or your bank account. It's about serving your country. When you walk into my administration, you will not be able to work on regulations or contracts directly related to your former employer for 2 years. And when you leave, you will not be able to lobby my administration ever, period. You will not be able to lobby and cash in on service in my administration. I'll also institute an absolute gift ban so that no registered lobbyist can curry favor with members of my administration based on how much they can spend on a fancy dinner. I'll make our government open and transparent so that anyone can ensure that our business is the people's business. Now, Justice Louis Brandeis once said, "Sunlight is the greatest disinfectant." And as president, I'm going to make it impossible for congressmen or lobbyists to slip pork barrel projects or corporate welfare into laws when no one's looking, because when I'm president, meetings where laws are written will be more open to the public, no more secrecy. That's a commitment I make to you as president. No more secrecy. And when there's a bill that ends up on my desk as president, you, the public, will have 5 days to look online and find out what's in it before I sign it, so that you know what your government's doing. When there are meetings between lobbyists and a government agency, we'll put as many of those meetings as possible online for every American to watch. When there's a tax bill being debated in Congress, you will know the names of the corporations that would benefit and how much money they would get. And we will put every corporate tax break and every pork barrel project online for every American to see. You will know who asked for them, and you can decide whether your representative is actually representing you. So that's what we're going to do about political reform. Now, we've got a second set of reforms. Government reform. We've got to make government work again. Think about Katrina. Think about what's happening in terms of toy safety and food safety and just the basic things, basic functions of government. We're not doing a good job. And we need to eliminate the waste and the fraud and abuse in our government. We're facing the largest deficit in history, Green Bay. We are facing the largest government bailout in history. We are also facing some of the greatest challenges in our history. And dealing with those challenges are going to cost some money to fix our healthcare system so everybody has coverage, to make sure that our schools are working and our young people can go to college, to build a new energy economy and invest in solar and wind and biodiesel so we can finally free ourselves off our dependence on foreign oil. We need to put people back to work, rebuilding our infrastructure, our broadband lines, our roads, our bridges. And let me tell you, if people tell you we can't afford it, you just remind them we are spending $10 billion a month in Iraq when they've got a $79 billion surplus. We could be spending some of that money right here in the United States, rebuilding Wisconsin and rebuilding America. Bring them home. So we've got a lot of work to do, and some of it's going to cost money. And the only way we can do it, without leaving our children with an even larger mountain of debt, is if Washington starts taking responsibility for every dime that it spends. Now, like I said, we can start by ending a war in Iraq that's costing us $10 billion a month. When this war started, a war that I opposed and John McCain was one of the biggest cheerleaders for, he said, I said this would be a war of undetermined costs. He said that it would be paid, rebuilding Iraq would be repaid by the oil revenues out of Iraq. He was wrong. I was right. Iraqis now have a $79 billion surplus. We should stop sending $10 to $15 billion a year, a month to Iraq and start rebuilding America. You know what else we can do? We can, let me give you another example. We're sending $15 billion a year in overpayments to insurance companies for Medicare. We need to eliminate that. We need to go after tens of billions of dollars in Medicare and Medicaid fraud. And if we got those savings, then we could do something about making sure that prescription drugs were affordable under Medicare so that every senior had the care that they needed. We need to stop spending $3 billion a year to banks so that they provide student loans that government could provide for less. Hundreds of millions of dollars a year in subsidies to agribusiness that can survive just fine without your tax dollars, so we can take some of that money and help family farmers who are actually struggling all across Wisconsin and all across America. So I will put an end to this waste when I'm president, because we need that money for some of the vital priorities that will help America grow. And now listen, I'm not a Democrat who believes that we can or should defend every government program just because it's there. There's some that don't work like we had hoped. You know, the Bush administration spent $1 billion a year on a reading program that hasn't improved our children's reading. We should take that money and use it for things that work. There's some programs that have been duplicated by other programs that we just need to cut back. You know, like waste at the Economic Development Agency and the Export-Import Bank that's become little more than a fund for corporate welfare. I understand also there are parts of these programs that may be worth defending, and politicians of both parties will definitely do so. But if we hope to meet the challenges of our time, we have to make difficult choices. As president, I'll go through the entire federal budget, page by page, line by line, and I will eliminate the programs that do not work and are not needed so we can start providing the funding for the programs that do work and that are needed. That's common sense. And even for the programs that we do need, I'll make them work better and cost less. I want to create a high-performance team that evaluates every agency and every office based on how well they're serving the American taxpayer. We are going to fire government managers who aren't getting results. We will cut funding for programs that are wasting your money. We will use technology and the lessons from the private sector to improve efficiency across every level of government, because we cannot meet 21st century challenges with a 20th century bureaucracy, and that's going to change when I'm president. You know what else we're going to do, Green Bay? We're going to save billions of dollars by cutting private contractors and improving management of the hundreds of billions of dollars our government spends on private contracts. I will end the abuse of no-bid contracts for good. You know, let me just give you an example. One employee of a former Halliburton subsidiary admitted that he was ordered to put his company's logo on towels provided to U.S. troops because our government, your tax dollars, would pay for it no matter how much it cost. Logos, their company logos on U.S.-owned towels. That makes no sense. That is wasteful. It is wrong. It is going to end when I'm president of the United States. So Halliburton better be clear. We're going to change our practices. We're not going to keep on giving our money away. And for all his talk about earmark abuse, what Senator McCain doesn't mention these days is the corporate abuse in our tax system. Abuse that has cost far more than earmarks ever have. In 2003, loopholes and tax breaks allowed 28 major corporations to actually have negative tax liabilities. They paid no taxes. I don't know if you guys were able to get away with this. I guess you didn't hire lobbyists. We lose $100 billion every year because corporations get to set up mailboxes offshore so they can avoid paying a dime of taxes in America. Imagine if you got to do that. You could just open up a mailbox down in the Cayman Islands somewhere. There's a building right now in the Cayman Islands that is the address for 18,000 corporations. Now that's either the biggest building in the world or it's the biggest scam in the world. And I think we know which one it is. So we're going to shut down those offshore tax havens and all those corporate loopholes. You shouldn't have to pay higher taxes because some big corporation cut corners to avoid paying theirs. All of us have a responsibility to pay our fair share. That's what putting our country first means. And by the way, while we're on the subject of taxes, this is kind of an aside, but I just have to mention this. Some of you have seen these ads saying, I'm going to raise your taxes. Now, I just want everybody to be absolutely clear on this. This is indisputable. Under my plan, 95% of America's working families would get a tax cut. 95%. 95% of you would have more money in your pocket under the Obama plan. John McCain has given $300 billion worth of tax cuts to the wealthy and the corporations. 95% of you will get a tax cut under my plan. I provide 3 times the amount of tax relief that John McCain does. If you are making less than $250,000, you will not see a dime in increased taxes, not a single dime in increased taxes when I'm president of the United States. Your tax rates will be lower under an Obama administration than they were under Ronald Reagan. And if you are a senior citizen making $50,000 a year or less, we will eliminate income taxes on your Social Security, so you've got a little additional money to spend on pumping gas and buying food. So don't be fooled, Green Bay. Don't Don't buy into some of these ads. All right, you know, you're not, absolutely. All right. Now, we've got a third set of reforms that I'm going to pursue, and that's the updated common sense regulations of the financial market that I've been calling for since March. Rules of the road that will make Wall Street fair, open, and honest, that will ensure a crisis like this can never happen again. So I've outlined 6 principles that such reforms should follow. First, if you're a financial institution that can borrow from the government, then you should be subject to government oversight and supervision. Pretty simple. Taxpayers who have now been called upon to spend nearly $1 trillion to save our economy from the excesses of Wall Street have every right to expect that financial institutions are not taking excessive risks. It's pretty straightforward. If they expect our money to back them up, then we've got to have some say in terms of how they spend the money and what they're doing with it. All right. Number 2, we need to reform requirements on all regulated financial institutions, investigate ratings agencies and potential conflicts of interest with the people that they're rating, and establish transparency requirements that demand full disclosure by financial institutions to shareholders. Part of what's happened here is that nobody was minding the store, and folks were saying that stocks were worth a lot more than they thought they were, and that all these mortgage-backed securities were worth millions of dollars even though they weren't. We've got to have open books and full disclosure and transparency so that everybody knows what exactly is going on. Number 3, we need to streamline our overlapping and competing regulatory agencies that can't oversee the large, complex institutions that dominate the financial landscape. Number 4, we need to regulate institutions for what they do, not what they are. Now, over the last few years, commercial banks and thrift institutions, they were subject to guidelines on subprime mortgages, but those things didn't apply to mortgage brokers and companies. And so what happened was the regulatory framework failed to protect homeowners and made no sense for our financial system. That has to change. Number 5, we need to crack down on trading activities that crosses the line to market manipulation. We need regulators that actually enforce the rules instead of overlooking them. Now, the SEC should investigate and punish all market manipulation. 6th, we must establish a process that identifies systemic risk to the financial system, like the crisis that's overtaken our economy. We need a standing financial market advisory group to meet regularly, provide good advice to the President and the Congress and regulators on the state of our financial markets and the risks that they face. It's time that we think ahead and anticipate risks before they erupt into a full-blown crisis, and then we ask taxpayers to bail people out. We should be seeing things ahead of time, not waiting until the last minute. Now, these are the principles that should guide the reforms we need to establish for a 21st century regulatory system, a system that recognizes our free market economy has only worked because we've guided the market's invisible hand with a higher principle, that America prospers when all Americans can prosper, not just when a few prosper, but when everybody has a chance to live out their American dream. And Green Bay, to restore this prosperity, we have to change Washington. We've got to reform our regulations, our politics, and our government, but we will not be able to make these changes with the same policies, the same lobbyists, or the same Washington culture that allows politicians and special interests to set their own agenda. And that's what we're going to get from John McCain. Now, John McCain has provided extraordinary service in uniform for this country, and we all owe him a great deal of thanks for that. We owe him thanks for that. But after 26 years of being part of this Washington culture, all that he has changed is his slogan for the fall campaign. And the people in charge of that campaign prove that if we elect John McCain, it's not a team of mavericks we'll be sending to the White House, it's a team of lobbyists. We can't afford 4 more years of that kind of politics. We can't chart a new course with the same philosophy and the same captain at the ship. We need real change. And it won't be easy. It won't be easy. The kind of change we're looking for never is. What we're up is some very powerful, entrenched interests in Washington who will say anything and do anything and fight with everything they've got just to keep things the way they are. But I have to tell you, Green Bay, I feel good about our chances. Because I've got something more powerful than they do. I've got you. I've got you. I've got you. I've got the people. And in this campaign, you've already shown what history teaches us, that at defining moments like this one, change doesn't come to Washington, come from Washington, change comes to Washington. We're going to bring change to Washington. Change has always come from places like Wisconsin, the state where the progressive movement was born, where laws were passed to regulate the railroads and the insurance companies, laws that protected consumers and the safety of factory workers. It was a movement rooted in a principle that was known as the Wisconsin idea, the idea that government works best in the hands of the people, not the special interests, that your voices should be heard louder than the whispers of lobbyists. That's the Wisconsin idea. The voices of farmers, the voices of labor, the voices of ordinary families who are fighting every day for the American dream. That's the America we are fighting for. That's the kind of government we need right now. And if you will work with me and fight with me and knock on some doors with me and make some phone calls with me, I promise you, Green Bay, we're not just going to win Wisconsin, we are going to win this general election, and you and I together, we're going to change the country and change the world. Thank you, everybody. God bless you.